if I can rebuild the person's skull, it's their skull. If I can put their face back on, it's their face. As long as all the bits are there, then you can get a good likeness and bring them back so viewing as possible.
How many bodies have you treated?
Personally, I think I've probably treated 10,000 maybe, plus.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. I was born in Edinburgh, quite a long time ago now. I was born in Simpsons Hospital. Growing up, I suppose for myself was kind of a bit dramatic, I suppose, and not the best of childhoods. Mum and Dad split up quite young, and my brother and sister went and stayed with Mum, and I went and stayed with my dad. And back in the day, I didn't quite look like this. I was kind of ginger hair, centre parting, long hair, and got bullied a lot. So it was a bit of a task going to school every day. I think I survived school rather than anything else. It wasn't a good time for me, but yeah, I survived it and I got through it well.
And what did you aspire to be when you were growing up?
Well, that's a funny story because myself and one of my friends used to bunk off school. We used to go and help the local builders, and I always aspired to be a labourer. And I really fancied doing that. Apart from that, I didn't really have any direction when I was at school. I was told it wouldn't amount to much, just because of the way I was. But yeah, like I say, got through school not too bad. Came out the other side of that, and I managed to get a couple of jobs. I started as a trainee chef for about a couple of years, bus driver, labourer, which I enjoyed, and then I worked for a company called Ferranti's, and then was made redundant from there after 5 years.
Did you ever have any aspirations to be working with dead people?
Growing up, never even really understood anything about death. I suppose my first instance with death would be, I would maybe be 9 or so, and my cousin Claudette, she would be 11, she had gone out to play, and she had an asthma attack and died. Didn't really understand it, what it was about. I was just too young. Didn't really come across death again until I started looking at the opportunity to come working in the funeral industry. I think I'd been out of work for about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I seen a driving job coming up at a funeral director's. Didn't really understand what was involved in that, but I thought I'll go for it. I got an interview for the job, went along there. It was quite a big funeral director's, and I remember going in on the day, it was quite dark, almost a wee bit like this, and over in the corner there was a coffin with a body in it, and I could see the body, I just didn't want to look at it. But while I was getting my interview, the chat was like, do I understand that I will be picking up dead people, bringing them back to the funeral home? And I just sort of said, yeah, no problem with that. I've thought about it, but really I hadn't. And after that interview, before I'd even got home, he'd phoned me and said, could I start the next day? So I didn't really get a chance to think about the job. So I was just chuffed to go there. So I get the job and go there. That's where it kind of started. Didn't really have any contact with the deceased apart from picking them up. It wasn't until later on when I joined another company that's when my career started taking off.
When you did start having to deal with dead bodies, what was the thing that surprised you most about them?
The very first time, what I found really, really surprising was when I had to go on to the new job I'd got, I had bigger funeral directors, and I had to go on a home death. And that's when somebody dies at home, you have to pick them up from their house, obviously. When I went and touched the body to pick it up, it was really, really warm, and I was not expecting that. Normally, from a hospital or that, they'd have been in a fridge and they'd be cooler. But now I understand that when people die, your body temperature rises, and then it goes back down again. And then rigor mortis will start setting in, but I just wasn't ready for that.
What led you to decide to pursue embalming?
So I think there was an occasion where I'd helped my employer with a body that was going back to Ireland, and it had a post-mortem, and hadn't really seen much about post-mortems, but the person was also a bit we call them decom, so their decomposition set in. So I had to help him with one to do the case to go back to Ireland. Having achieved that and getting it done and seeing the final result and making them presentable for viewing, it kind of just spiralled from there. I think the fears maybe of death and the uncertainties were replaced by sort of a competence of doing the job, and I swapped it all for treating people with dignity and making sure they get treated well, and solving the problems that we face with dead bodies.
What exactly is embalming and why do you do it?
So embalming, keeping it simple, is we're replacing the blood in the body with a preservative fluid via the arterial system. So what we would do, I like to think of it as like a plumbing system. So we're cutting a small incision into that system to inject in the way, and we're going to raise a vein and we're going to drain out of that. So we're replacing the blood and saturating the tissues with a preservative, and that will slow down the process of decay and all that up until the time of the funeral. And the reasons why we do it, mostly I would say, are one for preservation, presentation and sanitation. That's the three main things that we do it for. So there's lots of reasons why we do it, and there are a few reasons why we can't do it. There's religious reasons we can't do it sometimes, and that's the, we can't force anybody to do that.
If you don't do it, how quickly does a body start to decompose?
I've seen bodies going off within 24 hours, depending on, if you get a tissue gas case, they can go off really, really quickly. Normally it's a site of gangrene or something like that, and that starts the gas, and they go really quickly. So it just varies, but it can be within 24 hours.
And is there a point where you can't do embalming if they've too far gone?
For me, definitely not. In my whole 34 years I think I worked in the industry, there's probably about 2 or 3 times we've not been able to embalm. For me, there has to be a point where, if this person's been dead for 2 or 3 months and they're covered in maggots and they're getting eaten, you have to treat it. I don't want anybody lying and maggots getting worse and worse and worse. So for me, always treat them. So we go through a process. Presentation is not going to be possible. Sanitation is, so you have to treat these things. For me, that's the way it should be. They've been treated the best they can be, rather than leaving them as they come in. For me, it's always going to be somebody's mum, dad, brother, sister. I repeat that all the time. But that's the basics of everything I do, because I've got to remember, would I want that person looked after if they were my relative? So what I see is that's somebody's mum and dad or whoever, and then I've got to look past the trauma, past all the blood, past all the injuries, and see what we can do with it. All the cases are different. And it could get a trauma case, it could be a cancer case, it could be jaundice case, edema. There's loads and loads of different scenarios with problems, and to overcome that, there's a different process for each one. How do we sort that? How do I let this family view the person? Because if I don't do it, they can't view them.
Why did you move into Reconstruction?
I think going back quite a while in the career when I was younger, my stepdad had died at 57, Archie. He had died, and my mum and my brother and my sister really wanted to see him, but he'd had a post-mortem. I don't know if you don't know much about post-mortems, but the skull cap was back together. They take that off to get the brain out, and it goes back, but the top had slipped in behind the front of it, so there was a big ridge right across his head, and you could see a clear ridge, and he looked terrible, and I couldn't fix it. So, and they still came in and seen him, and they looked horrendous. And it still sticks with me because I could fix that now.
So it was you working on your own stepfather that encouraged you?
Yeah, I would say so, because it's just the start of the process of how could I fix that. And then I found out about Reconstruction, and I've looked into that, and I was lucky enough to be sent over to America on numerous times to learn Reconstruction. When I first went, I think I was 25 when I first went over, and that was right out of your comfort zone, so I didn't know about Reconstruction. So when you were able to work on bodies that had been left to medical research, and it's basically you're working on trauma cases. And when I first seen the case, I thought, I can't do this, there's no way. But you had a whole week to do it, and by the end of the week, we had them in a coffin for viewing. And I was just like, that blew me away. And I just thought, yeah, if we can do that, I want to do that back in the UK.
What are the limits of what you can repair?
I like to think there's not a lot of limits, as long as everything is there. Right? So the idea behind Reconstruction is if you get a case that's maybe a crushed skull, if I can rebuild the person's skull, it's their skull. If I can put their face back on, it's their face. If they've got injuries and I can repair them, then by the time we get the whole person back together, the features are in line, it's them. There's no guesswork, you're not making it up. So as long as all the bits are there, then you can get a good likeness and bring them back so viewing as possible.
When you say if you've got all the bits, you're quite literally meaning the bones of the actual person?
So if you've got a badly traumatised head and it's crushed in, if you've not really got any experience of it, the whole head will move about. So to get reconstructed, you really have to get access to all these broken bones. So sometimes you have to make it worse to make it better. So you need to get all the bones out, have them lying at the side, and then one by one you're bringing them back to the bones that are still in place, and then you're rebuilding it piece by piece. And it's just a really complex jigsaw, and it can take quite a long time.
Are there any cases that stayed with you?
The wee boy one, that's the one that always sticks with me.
Would you mind telling us about it?
Yeah, so the wee boy was only 5-year-old. His mum had sent him out to play on his bike, and when he was out in the backyard, a truck came over and ran over him. And I got a phone call from the Glaswegian mortuary, the girl there, and she was in tears because she couldn't do anything for him. But they were desperate. Mum and Dad were desperate to see him, so I suggested they bring him through to us, and we could have a look. We spent a couple of days putting him back together, dressed him in his own clothes, put him in his coffin, and the Mum and Dad were able to come in and see them. And I know for a fact that I've got a letter from them thanking me and thanking the funeral director for his assistance in the funeral, and it gave them the closure that they needed, or the start of it at least. She needs to see him, I think, to here he is, he's dead, and that's as brutal as it sounds, that sometimes that's what is needed. And so for me, it's my responsibility there. The responsibility there is to try and get them to see him for closure, for absolute closure, and for putting the wee guy back together. It's like he was himself again. He was a wee boy again. Everybody's different, because a lot of people it's for closure. If somebody dies, it's sudden traumatic death, right? Now it could be somebody's went to work in the morning in a car crash, or somebody's been murdered. You're not going to see them again, right? And it leaves a lot of trauma for the people behind. And I've had cases where a murder victim, Mum and Dad definitely wanted to see her. She wasn't going to see her. And probably a week or so later, after I'd done everything I could do, they came in and seen her. And, all they said was, I didn't expect her makeup to be so bright. And I'm thinking, wow, you've not seen all the trauma. And there was a lot. So that's my job done.
At this point in your career, how many bodies have you treated?
Personally, I think I've probably treated 10,000 maybe, plus.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You've worked on thousands of people you didn't know personally. What was it like working on people you knew, like your stepdad?
When Archie had died, it was only me who was going to do it, because there's nobody else to do it. And from then, I've kind of grown that I would take the place. When these things come up, like one of my best friends had killed himself when he's 30, so I looked after him. I've looked after ex-father-in-laws, relatives, friends' mums, dads. So it's always me that does it. And I've always said that, when my mum and dad died, I would look after them. My mum passed away in May this year, and so that was a hard time for me, because I've dealt with people's deaths all my life, and I've seen death all my life. But when my mum did die, I was able to do it myself. So for me, I don't think there's a difference. Did I treat my mum differently to anybody else? No, not really. But it's my mum, and I was able to spend that time that other people don't get. And that was a healing time for me, I think. Said a lot of things back to her, and hopefully she heard a lot of them. The embalming itself, I spoke away to her. For me it was a healing time. I would like all the people out there to have somebody like me looking after their mum, and have that confidence that or your dad or brother, sister, when you need somebody, you want them to be of a certain calibre, and you want them to look after your relative really well.
What do you want to happen to you when you die?
Oh, genuinely, I've never really thought about it.
You've never thought about it?
No. When I die, I'll die, and what funeral directors I go to, that'll be up to my wife. It's just not something that really bothers me. I'm not going to worry about it. It could be tomorrow, it could be 20 years. So for me, it's not worth thinking about and worrying about, because it'll happen when it's going to happen.
When you look back at the first time you worked on your stepfather, how much have you progressed?
Immensely. I think at the start, it's all the uncertainty and the fear of not knowing what to do and all these things, whereas now there's not much stuff out there that phases me for trying to treat or solve or make happen. So, like night and day. But that's taken 30 years. I get pleasure out of every in the industry who know me, who knows my standards, how I work, and I like to use this platform. Doing stuff with St Andrews University, that's another massive platform to raise awareness of what our industry can do, what training is available, and with people coming on these courses and listening, the profession can only get better.
Tell me about St Andrews. What work are you doing now?
I do a post-mortem facial reconstruction course at St Andrews. So instead of having to go to America, which can be really expensive, we've now got a platform at the university where we can train people. And it's really successful at the minute. And we've had cases where at the Manchester bombings, one of the girls that attended the course, I think 2 weeks after the course, the Manchester bombings had happened, and I got a really nice email from her just thanking me for she knew how to approach things. Somebody from last year, they had a young mum who had died with cancer. She had a really bad cancerous growth and a lot of her face was missing. She had a 11-year-old daughter who wanted to see her, and she managed to fix that, and they came in and see her, and she got a lovely letter from them thanking her, and I got a letter from her thanking me. And it's the best feeling in the world to be able to sort that for that wee girl.
With all the training you're trying to instill in this world, what do you want to be your legacy?
The stuff I'm doing at university, right, and just having lots of people going out there with a higher level of expertise. I've been lucky enough to do the job I love, and if I can pass some of that on to some people, then fantastic.
Looking back at the boy who just wanted to be a labourer to who you are now, what do you think of that guy, and what do you think he's got to learn?
He would have been a good labourer. No, for me, like I say, I had no aspirations, right? I had no guidance to where I wanted to go. I had no thoughts to where I wanted to go. Once I got into it, I knew what I wanted to do. Anybody that knows me well, even at the universities, wherever, I'll just say I'm just me. I am just me. I'm just Martin, the guy for doing the road. That's it. Right? I don't see myself as anything special. I'm just good at what I do, passionate about what I do, and I can't change that because that's just me. I'm 60 years old now, so the more people I can share what I know with, the better. And it sets all these people off on their journeys. So that's it. I'm just me.
You're just you.
I'm just me.
In this case, there was pots and pans on the top of the cooker, and you kind of think to yourself, they just haven't done their washing up. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But then when you looked at the material in the frying pan, it was like, wow, that doesn't look like normal food, And anyway, it turned out that, yeah, it was brain.